women love the show because it depicts two people in a sexual situation who are basically equals. And that's not something that women experience in the depictions of heterosexual sex.
Kaylee Cuoco and Sam Claflin star in the MGM Plus original series, Vanished. When the man Alice loves disappears on a train to the south of France, every romantic memory becomes evidence. Every intimate detail, a potential threat. She thought she knew everything about him, but she may not even know his real name. Four-part thriller Vanished premieres February 1st on MGM Plus. Finding the truth is a dangerous affair.
Before listening to today's exciting episode, I just want to introduce myself. It's Dr. Andrew Rimby. I am the host of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, an arts and culture podcast. I'm so excited that you're listening or watching. Please make sure that you follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're getting the podcast. Please review us. Please share the podcast. It really means a lot. The more exposure the podcast has, the more I can book exciting guests. There's a Patreon. Ad-free episodes are on the Patreon. I also release bonus content on there. I talk about our book club, which is free. We're discussing on February 1st, Wuthering Heights, in honor of the Emerald Fennell adaptation that's coming out. So if you want to join the book club, it's on Zoom. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just message me. I'll send you the Zoom link. Please make sure you're also following us on social media. We have a new TikTok account. It's Dr. Andrew Rimby. Long story short, I think TikTok could not handle the spicy queer male content that I was putting out there. So I had to create a new TikTok. I'm going to be extra careful now. Trust me. Also, Instagram, Facebook, Ivory Tower Boiler Room. I'll see you on there. And now, here's today's exciting episode. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Andrew Rimby. Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room for what? Oh, this is going to be so fun. We're talking about how is Heated Rivalry, just how has it become this gay phenomenon and just taken over our social media airwaves and podcast airwaves. So I'm joined with two repeating guests. The first, Joseph Federico. It's his third time on the podcast. Welcome, Joseph, back again.
Thank you so much.
Jeremy Fox from the Gay and Lesbian Review. Welcome back after your queer ethnography episode.
Thank you for having me back, Andrew. Good to see you again.
And I should say Joseph is a queer media marketing whiz. And then welcome, first-time guest, Dr. Colin Carman, Professor Colin Carman, who, we've chatted a lot about his interest in romanticism. So welcome to the podcast, Colin.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start off with that. Heated Rivalry. What is it about this show that has just struck a chord? Like, how are you each, maybe how did you encounter Heated Rivalry, and did you think that it would get this immense fandom that it has now built out there? So, if we want to start with Joseph, what is it about this show?
So I will start with a serious note, or on a serious note, that I think for me, I didn't want to watch the show originally because I still carry 20 plus years later of being out and proud and having evolved my voice over the years with my business, with my personal life. I carry that internalized homophobia, and I saw these two beautiful gay men on my social media platforms. This is where I was first introduced to Heated Rivalry. And I said, I have to pause a moment, do a little bit of research and recon and process what I'm seeing. And I also don't like things that have become too popular, and I like to wait a little bit longer before I, fully dive in. And I just said, well, I'm homesick after Christmas. The last episode hasn't been dropped yet. I'm going to see what this is about. And I completely fell in love, but it was the representation, not just the sex, that got me going and made me think further about how I'm going to create content regarding this show, how it's impacting our society, what does it mean under the current regime and administration. And then that's how I've just been so enveloped, as I believe we all have, been here and beyond in the community. And even our allies are enveloped in this on social media. And it's been such a phenomenon that I want to watch a third time. So
Third time, there you go. And then yeah, I love it. And then Jeremy, how about you with the Heated Rivalry?
Also first encountered it on social media before I had even heard that the show existed. I was seeing screen caps and short clips from it, and I was like, what is this? Is this like some European art film or something? Already what I'm seeing is kind of sexier and more more direct, more explicit than I'm used to in American television or movies generally. Once I sort of pieced together what it was, I started looking around a little bit for more info on it on social media, and it was all over the place. Like there, even within the first few days of the first episode dropping, there was so much discourse, and I want to point out that this is at least as much driven by straight women as it is by queer people, men or otherwise. Like there there is such a response among straight women to this show, and I included in the review that I wrote for the Gay and Lesbian review of Heated Rivalry, a feminist writer, I believe her name is Jessica Valenti, who
Oh,
said that women love the show because it depicts two people in a sexual situation who are basically equals. And that's not something that women experience in the depictions of heterosexual sex. And one last note and then I'll hand off. Last night, I had a monthly event that I host as the president of the Boston chapter of the LGBTQ Journalists Association. We met up for trivia at Club Cafe, which is sort of the big queer club, welcoming cis men, cis women, and trans people, all kinds of people in the community. Um, and they were doing a Heated Rivalry screening of the first two episodes before trivia started, and I I have never seen that many people there when I walked in at 6:30 p.m. on a weeknight, and you could hear a pin drop when people were so rapt. Like people were eating and drinking, but they were watching so attentively through at least the first episode. And it got a little bit more raucous during the second episode for whatever reason. And you could hear, and it seemed like the voices were mostly women. And I didn't poll them. I don't know how many of those women were straight or queer. But it seemed like a lot of straight girls who were like shouting out in excitement and support of this queer story. So I think it's like the reason this is bigger than anything else, and bigger than some of the other queer shows that we've been talking about in advance of this recording, it's because it has such a huge appeal to straight women who are also then getting their boyfriends and husbands to watch in many occasions. And some of them are big fans of the show now, too.
yeah, it's kind of like the Real Housewives crossover appeal. But yeah, we could talk about definitely after, we hear from Colin. Each of you feel free just to jump in and, we'll just chat it all out. But yeah, I think that crossover appeal with straight women is something we should return to. Yeah, how about you, Colin? How did Heated Rivalry find you?
Yeah, well, you beat me to the punch because we should talk about its popularity with women, and I've heard it called television by women for women, and we could talk about why it's popular, particularly there. The first article I wrote for the Gay and Lesbian Review was on Brokeback Mountain, and when Heath Ledger passed, and I think it's safe to say this is the biggest queer phenomenon since Brokeback. It's a phenomenon for sure, and I don't use that word very lightly. Um, and I think that has to do too with the fact, and we're spoiling here, and if you haven't watched it, turn off the pod. But
and then return to the pod.
And return to the pod.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you, host. It's a happy ending. I mean, it literalizes a happy ending, shot from behind. They're going into the sunset. They've had the fantasy coming out experience. The parents are not phased or upset. That's not my experience or most people's experiences. So it's fantasy and it's a happy ending. And I think if it's Jacob Tierney, the creator, he said as much. He said, I wanted to give us, and it's from the novels by, I think, Rebecca Reed, and it's following them very closely. I haven't read them, but it's a happy ending. It's not the tragedy that Brokeback is and was, and maybe that tells us something about where we are 25 years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mm-hmm. True. And I think Rachel Reed.
Rachel Reed.
Which is, you got the RR, and then flip it around, Wicked Witch. Okay, sorry. That's a TikTok thing with Wicked.
Which you guys do that.
And apparently she's just been diagnosed with Parkinson's. She's 45, and totally foreign to me, but this is a very niche reading market and gay sex and sports, and this has been going on a long time before we're aware of it. So and romance bookstores like South Jersey, there's one in Collingswood, there's like North Jersey romance bookstores, New York City. I feel like romance bookstores are really becoming really a mass appeal. So I mean, we've offered so much food for thought here. Do we want to talk about this crossover appeal? Like, I think Brokeback Mountain is interesting because I brought that up with Greg Cope White, who wrote The Pink Marine, which became Boots. And, I even said Brokeback Mountain, like, had such this aura to straight people. Like, I just remember the scene in the tent and the spit and, like, how, like, that's our explicit moment in Brokeback Mountain. But, like, Heated Rivalry, the sex, what is the sex like? Because we don't see any full frontal nudity, which we see full frontal nudity actually a lot in other TV shows. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of male full frontal nudity. I'm trying to think. Euphoria. What
Industry.
else? Oh, Industry. Yeah. Even...
the HBO shows, basically.
HBO shows. Michael Fassbender, I know, has done it. So, like, would the full frontal nudity with this Canadian show have taken away something? Like, is it because you don't see everything that there's almost kind of an appeal, especially with this crossover audience, with it speaking to straight women?
I'm going to defallicize this and make it not about the lack of full frontal. And I've learned or heard that women find the fact that there isn't a woman in the sex scene a relief. And the women characters are the best friends, with the exception of Scott Hunter, whose parents died, who has no friends. He has nobody except a barista to give a ticket to for a smoothie, which is bizarre. But with the exception of Scott Hunter, who's so lonely, every male character has a female bestie who knows the secret. So I think women find it appealing too, because with the exception of Rose, what's his face? Scott, Shane's, beard, the women are confidants. And so it does portray them positively, and I'll pass the baton, but also Ilya is dominant and aggressive, but he always asks consent. He asks permission and then he proceeds. So I'll throw that out there. And their aggression, maybe for women too, the male aggression is confined to the rink, but it's, they're not throwing dishes or throwing punches at each other like Brokeback, right? They're in love.
Yeah, they're not taking that internalized homophobia and then turning it to violence. That's important. No. Thanks for that, Colin.
Also worth noting.
Oh, sorry.
You go ahead, and then I'll go.
Well, thank you. I agree with what Colin had just said, but also going back to what Andrew had posed originally, is the woman also get the representation of being the beards, and they get the spotlight, and there are protectors, as they have always been. Not just the lesbians, during the Stonewall riots and the AIDS crisis, but also the straight woman get the notoriety that they deserve. And we've all, I'm sure, had experiences where we've had the beards at proms or in the office, or just to cover ourselves as we try to figure ourselves out, which was beautifully represented in Heated, and I'm sure in the books too, which I actually just ordered the first two. But as far as the nudity is concerned, I don't think we needed the full frontal to get the picture. It was more romantic to not see male full frontal. We knew what they were doing in the shower. We knew what they were doing in bed. And furthermore, to take it in a little bit more of a spicy, serious manner, other gay gentlemen and influencers are talking about the prep it takes for gay sex to happen. I don't even think we needed to see that. They were just in love, needed to, get off and express their feelings off the rink. And it evolved into this beautiful love story, which did have a happy ending. So I don't think there was anything amiss regarding the full frontal. I would have preferred to not see it, to be honest. We have other platforms for that. So I'll pass the baton as well.
I think it would have, in a way, destroyed the fantasy a little bit if there were full frontal. I mean, this is adapted from a romance novel, and as I say in the review I wrote, I really think that Jacob Tierney did a lot to elevate it because, frankly, has anybody here read the book?
No. I have to, but yeah.
So I didn't read it with my eyes. I couldn't find a copy when I was preparing to write my review, but I was able to download the audiobook. So I listened to that, and bless her heart, she's doing great. She's riding a wave of success, but Rachel Reed, not a wordsmith. I mean, the book is very literal and very direct. There's not a metaphor in sight.
It may be freezing here in the Northeast, but when I received my copy of the Gay and Lesbian review, it warmed me up instantly. Their new issue is all about kink culture. Let me explain a little. I'm going to read what Jeremy C. Fox, the managing editor, has to say about this issue. He says, this issue marks a bit of a departure for the Gay and Lesbian review as we crack open the bedroom door to explore the practices and paraphilias that interest or obsess some LGBT people and the roots of their appeal. Several future articles delve deeply into why certain kinks turn some of us on, and whether we can discern historical and aesthetic rationales behind these fixations. This magazine features articles such as The Power of the Foot. Oh yeah, they're going there with foot kinks. Maplethorpe's Gift to America, Reclaiming the Sacred Dungeon. Tumblr was a gateway to kink, and Cruising with Boyd McDonnell. You definitely want to get your hands on the kink issue here. I have an exclusive promo code that those at the Gay and Lesbian Review have granted to you all. It is ITBR Choice. Enter it when you check out on the glreview.org. And you will get a free issue of the magazine. I hope you all enjoy your reading, and it'll definitely keep you nice and cozy.
I stopped in the middle of reading an Andrew Holleran book so I could listen to that. And man, the contrast between these two writing styles could not have been greater. But
I would pay to listen to Andrew Holleran read from Heated Rivalry. Could we make that a podcast? Yeah, please.
Let's get Andrew Holleran. Let's get Andrew Holleran on a podcast first.
Could we talk him into doing his own version? Like
Yeah.
Ryan Adams re-recorded like a Taylor Swift album 10 or 15 years ago, I think. Could we get the Andrew Holleran version? Because that would be a great read, I think.
Yeah.
But it is incredibly explicit, to the point where I was like, okay, enough about the blowjob. I get it. I understand. He's about to come. Like, I
Yeah.
get it. But it is like, it's a bodice ripper, except you're ripping off
Jockstrap.
hockey jerseys.
Jockstrap, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta wear it.
But I was thinking about like what are the parallels, and I think obviously Brokeback Mountain was a big deal 20 years ago, but it didn't have the same crossover appeal that this story does, and I can't think of anything certainly in the intervening years that has had this kind of success in this kind of cultural ubiquity. I mean, I can't open a social media platform without immediately seeing 20 posts about Heated Rivalry, any social media platform. And I think a lot of that comes down to it being a romance novel. I was thinking actually maybe a better comparison is something like Bridgerton on Netflix, which was huge a few years ago when it premiered and remains popular, and also based on a romance novel. And I think that is giving the straight women who are interested in Heated Rivalry, they're getting a lot of the same kind of stuff from these two very different properties because they both follow the conventions of a romance novel. And I do think that I want to give Jacob Tierney a lot of credit because I think he executed that very well and respected what the form was and what it had to offer. But he also, I think, has excellent taste in casting and directing, and the cinematography is great. The sets are gorgeous. Like it is maybe the best version of this not very great book that you could have. And it's also this is a very out there take, but I think about stuff like The Godfather. Like, I haven't read it, but my understanding is Mario Puzo's original novel is very pulpy. It's just a gangster saga. It is not the sort of elevated intellectual experience that you have if you watch the Coppola film. And I mean, I'm not saying Jacob Tierney is Coppola, but I think both of them have taken pulp and elevated it through good taste and smart choices about what to use and what to like drop from the narrative.
No, that's fascinating
Yeah,
because
I
I
mean,
also
yeah.
I was just gonna say too, I think it's rare, like in this conversation, it's rare that a film or a TV show actually can sometimes aesthetically be elevated from the source material, but like I have my own gripe with how Wicked. I mean, I love the film versions, but I still
All
think the
roads lead back,
novel.
Andrew. All
Yeah.
roads lead back to Wicked. Yeah.
Well, I still think the novel just offers more social political nuance that you're not going to get when you're appealing to a G rating. And
Mhm.
like that's a choice when you try to figure out who your audience is. And something that Heated Rivalry, like the music, the tonality, the atmosphere of the lighting, like I think I agree everything with what you're saying, Jeremy. It actually reminds me of what Luca Guadagnino does in Call Me by Your Name, which in my opinion is probably one of the best like aesthetic queer films that we've seen done. Army Hammer controversy aside, there's been actors who've had controversies. Roman Polanski, we don't want to bring up his bio, but we still watch his films. And I showed my students the Canterbury Tales Pasolini film version, which literalizes everything in the Miller's Tale, like showing, cocks everywhere. And sometimes I think if you're too explicit, it actually becomes, like you're saying, too literal, and the fantasy just becomes erased. And like we
Well,
need that fantasy to thrive. And then I know, Colin, you were going to say something.
Well, I'd also add on, I don't read romance or genre fiction, but it's a slow burn. And we can talk about all the use of text messages, which is kind of funny. But it takes a while until they consummate things. And I think that's appealing to stereotyping to a female audience, in that it's not the gay male experience where it's sex first and romance later. It's flipped. Mm-hmm. Also, we should say the body homogeneity on the show, of the 3 shows, if we get to them, this show made me feel the most out of shape. I mean, I didn't know you could have an 8-pack. I thought it's a 6-pack, but the barista has an 8-pack. But we should say they're Ken dolls. And, if they had blue hair and, nose piercings, I don't think we'd be talking about this. And so we can talk about those deeper matters, but it just all looks really good. And it all looks the same. The guys look the same.
Yeah. Well, and they're all white too, which I do want to recognize that, how far have we moved from Queer as Folk in the 2000s, which I know Joseph came on to talk about that with me. But again, that did not have a crossover appeal. It was a very niche show, and we had a female couple, but we didn't have really. Well, no. We did have a strong female friendship. I lied. Justin's friend. She was the quintessential, and I'm going to say it because it's said in Overcompensating too. She was the fag hag. Have we returned to a nostalgic early 2000s kind of moment? Like with Degrassi, with Eating Out. I don't know if you all saw the Eating Out series. That was kind of always the joke. And so campy, which Heated Rivalry is not campy, which I think is also what makes it appealing.
Yeah.
It's not making fun of anything.
It's not funny. It's not funny. And Joseph, you go, but I also want to throw in the ring the issue of bi erasure. Ilya will fuck anything that doesn't fuck him first, but he is bisexual, and or at least he says, I've loved you, but we don't talk about that, but it's there. But anyway.
No. Well, that's also interesting too, Colin, because I will say, I myself, when I was first struggling with my orientation and my sexuality back in college, I originally came out as bisexual. I didn't mean it, but that doesn't mean that Ilya or the character or the performer or anybody that actually is bisexual doesn't mean it. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're open to, in the queer, specifically gay community, to really talk about those things and open up those conversations. So the show was also a conversation started to the bisexuality, journey, right? Mm-hmm. And we should be open to dating bisexual men if we're single, or hearing more about what makes that person tick and what turns them on, and how to love them, or how they love, right? Mm-hmm. As far as Queer as Folk, that could be a completely different episode. But for me, that was a playbook in the early 2000s when I was just coming out, where nothing else was like that on television. But that was pulpy, that was raw, that was queer, that was sex, that was fucking, that was everything. And in a few rewatches later, 20 years later, I find myself having been different characters that I had related to over the years. I was the twink Justin. I was, I'm currently the Brian, the ad exec, the business owner that, doesn't maybe want to fall in love, or, just all these different kinds of personas that are represented in Queer as Folk. Mm-hmm. But that was pulpy, that was more real. And to both Jeremy's and Colin's point, I feel that Heated Rivalry is more realistic, more romance, more fantasy. But I think we need that 20 years later to push the needle forward on, as we all had talked about, the representation, the bisexuality, the relationships we have with straight women, and those allyships. So,
yeah. Well, and the idea of there being no, not feeding into the celluloid closet, which, those listening, if you've never watched that documentary, it's so, foundational, but the whole gay tragedy, I just rewatched Carol, The Price of Saw, which plays around with queer tragedy, but there is some repairing going on there, but strangers on a train, rope, Call Me by Your Name, I would say queer longing and not being able to get what you want. It's just those tropes get repeated. Brokeback Mountain, I mean, is like Romeo and
Oh yeah.
Juliet at the end. And we don't
So,
have that with Heated Rivalry. We don't have
No.
that with Boots, and we don't have that with Overcompensating.
and
Mm-mm.
imagine if a rivalry ended with Shane crying in front of a fireplace,
Yeah.
Yeah.
For like 10
My,
minutes.
my last 2 cents on Heated Rivalry, since we're getting sexy, is look, straight men watch lesbian porn, and straight women like to see two guys go at it. And so,
Yep.
that's the fact. If you remember, The Kids Are All Right with
Oh,
Julianne
yeah.
Moore and Annette Bening, they're a lesbian couple who watch gay porn. So, it's again, I think in some ways still by women for women, but we'll see.
Yeah, well,
nothing
and
transcends that, but yes, yeah.
yeah, and Colin, I'm glad you bring that up because porn scholars actually say that um the reason that watching two men in porn, it feels the most authentic because there isn't like that performing for, I don't know, if there's two women, like, it's for the straight guys,
Right.
gays, or, it's feels more authentic because there's a type of like attachment there. And you're right. Women, even when I show them, like my friends, the Playgirl calendar I have, I'm like, I don't know if you want to see this. They're like, no, I want to see every picture. Like they like the fantasy too of, you know, seeing something that society hasn't really objectified, which is the male body.
Mhm.
It's the female body that's been objectified. So like turning the tables, I think, is still kind of taboo to
Right.
the mainstream culture, not to us. But yeah.
I think it's also worth noting that, like someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Colin, that Ilya always gets consent from Shane. But there's also, even in like the very first hookup scene, when neither they barely know each other, it's just sexual attraction. There's no deeper interest, but it's very tender nonetheless, and it starts off with like gentle kissing, and obviously moves on from there. But like it's a plot point later when they hook up and they don't kiss, and this is one of the unsent text messages that Colin was referring to. Like you see that it's not like a lot of hookups in fiction and in reality, with a closeted gay man who's like, I just want to have sex. I don't want to kiss. I don't want to do gay shit, basically. I
Yeah.
don't want to display affection toward you. I don't want to, deal with you on the level of an equal or a person who is worthy of tenderness and affection. It is always like these guys are going to fall in love. Like how can you not expect these guys to fall in love? Because they have, I mean, the actors have excellent chemistry together, but it's also directed and performed in a way that, I mean, in a way that I think is comfortable for women to watch, and in a way that neither one, like we're objectifying them, but they're not objectifying each other. They're treating each other roughly as equals, and they are very affectionate and in a lot of ways gentle with each other, which I think we probably all know that's not how every hookup, especially with a closeted guy, would go in real life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I think we should talk about the shower scene because I think that's the one that, you know, is the first sexual encounter, but also from what I've been reading or hearing, even from these hockey straight guys who I've like watched. I don't know if you've seen the hockey straight guys recapping Heated Rivalry, which is fascinating.
All over
Um,
TikTok.
yeah, they're like, I think they call it the like choking your chicken scene, which I would never say, which I think also separates me from a straight guy in
Such a straight
lingo.
thing to say.
But I would just say, they're like jerking off. But like we know what the gaze that eye
Well,
look is like. We know if you're like lingering with your eyes in a shower with another guy, something's going on.
mhm.
And I think it's fascinating to watch on social media when those straight boyfriends are watching and they're like, "Oh, this isn't a hockey show. Something they're into each other." Like, and
Hey now.
yeah, so like
I,
what's happening here?
Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to. I heard on another pod this morning that it was shot last, and the actor who plays Shane said he wished his butt was better developed because that was, and so it was shot on a very low budget, and the restaurant scenes, if you look closely, all take place in the same restaurant. But I also have heard it said that that scene is seen as sexual assault because he's not asking for it. And Ilya is basically masturbating at him. Now, this was on a pod where straight people were discussing it. And I'm just going to speak for myself. If a guy like Ilya started masturbating at me in a shower, I don't know if I'd call that assault. So I
He's
think
not Louis C.K.
That is
so
true.
this is where the straight gay viewership breaks down because that did not strike me as something that was transgressive or illegal, but I'll just throw that out
Well,
there.
let me also say, if you look on YouTube, there is like a video where straight guys react to gay porn. You don't see the porn, of course, because it is YouTube. But they're like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I think it's a gangbang scene, and they're like, "Oh my god, they're hurting this poor guy." Like it's just yeah. But again,
It's
I think
official. My mom and dad can't listen to this pod at this point, so
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
let's just
no,
go
that's-
there.
that's
Okay,
something we
the
know.
tell
ship
them
has
to stop
sailed.
at like minute 35. They'll be
With
good.
Joseph's Titanic theme, the ship has sailed at this point. So yeah.
Ship is, that's it.
But I know Joseph has to go soon. So like Joseph, is there anything else you wanted to like bring up as you're here in the space?
I do want to point out that scene, as the other gentleman had just mentioned, it was consensual because of they were eye fucking each other before Ely even started to masturbate. So I think that was consensual, and it was a very different story to be told for a gay brain than a straight brain or even a woman's brain that like, okay, maybe I would have hopped on that in the shower. You know what I mean? But Shane being autistic, and I was reading more about that. That's a whole different conversation. I think had to reevaluate that. And he stopped and he said, not here. And they went in to change and they got the room numbers. And then we know what happens after that. Spoiler alert. But I think that was totally consensual. And that's my last point, I guess, for today. But
like, it's that cruising,
totally
the way
cruising.
that the
They were looking
cruising,
at each other's bodies and asses and junk, and they were playing hockey essentially with each other's eyes and bodies. So it was absolutely consensual.
Yeah, like when my husband and I are in the sauna at the gym, there's definitely some guys who are trying to like put down some signals, and we just don't look, because if you engage in the look, which again we could get into like the ethics around that, because that's problem. And it is problematic, right? I'm not saying it's not, but like if you're in a shower and a guy like opens up the curtain and starts looking at you and is like gesturing, don't look. Like, don't engage if
you don't return the
don't
gaze,
want that.
And that's okay too. Yeah.
And if you want that, like we were with a friend who I'm gonna keep him anonymous, but we were at a bar called Atlas in New York City, and Flex. We went to two, and he's just like chatting with everyone. He's in an open relationship, and he's like there for the cruising, and like the way to see how all these guys are interacting with each other. Again, if you just want to be there for a good time, you have to really, like, my husband and I talk about the boundaries because we're monogamous. So again, these spaces, we have our own kind of language. And I think they, like you said, Joseph, they did a great job showing that
100%
throughout the series.
I'd also add that they are monogamous at this point. I don't know the books, but it does gesture to that, because Ilya, who I think is more of the sexual combine adventurer, he says something like Scott Hunter is next door and wouldn't he like to hear us? And so who knows where these two are headed, but this is the honeymoon phase. So we'll see where, but I'm not to spoil, but I'm told the books also have a happy ending as well.
Yeah.
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 Well, they're all gonna have happy endings, if you know what I mean.
Fair enough.
Joseph, can you just let everyone know, please, where to follow you and
Yeah, thank you so much.
yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram, namely Joseph A. Federico. Or if you have any questions regarding Heated Rivalry or anything regarding social media or PR, you can actually text me directly for a free consultation, 973-289-3517. I'm old school, and it
I
is
love
me.
it.
So
That's
thank you so
bold.
much, Andrew.
Thank you, Joseph. Okay, we will talk
Thank you so
soon.
much.
Okay,
Take care.
thank you. So,
So
I feel like we're now really positioned to jump into,
the two loser shows.
well, no, I'm not going to say that because I love Boots.
I love Boots
I
too.
have a
Boots,
dedication to Greg Cope White, but I also love Benito Skinner's comedy. And I think that, okay, well, let's start maybe with Boots because we do have shower scenes in Boots. Not the same element, but like who else was waiting? Because I asked this with, I know Jeremy listened to the episode, but I asked this of Greg, which is like, there are so many moments where this could become fan fiction. Like, oh, the recruits are going to get down and dirty in the shower, or the sergeant and Cameron are going to have something happen in the office. But like, it always gets rooted in reality of the boot camp experience.
Mhm.
So like, is that why it didn't have a crossover appeal? Is because it was too rooted in reality?
Jeremy, you go.
It's not just reality, it's a difficult, unpleasant reality. I mean, boot camp is not a fun place, and the drill instructors treat the young recruits really, really badly. They're constantly verbally abusive. They are sometimes physically abusive. One of them, spoiler alert, basically kills a guy. Like it is a very violent show at times, and especially like after the first episode or two and until the last couple of episodes, which were much more focused on character and relationships, and sort of the narrative like speeds up a little bit. Like those middle episodes are very much about the boot camp experience, and they can be grueling to watch because these kids are being treated horribly. And for me, it reminded me, I've never had a boot camp experience, but I've had bad bosses who were verbally abusive, and it reminded me more of that than any other experience that I've had. And
Now that the spring semester is here, I am so excited to let you all know about a publisher, an independent publisher that's celebrating 40 years of great books called Broadview Press. I love Broadview Press. I have so many of their editions of classic literature like Wuthering Heights, which is coming out soon, and it's our book club choice. And they have so many academic books for instructors and for students and the general public. So I've had so many exciting guests on, from guests talking about The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, guests talking about vampire literature, horror literature. I'm looking at you, Jeffrey Andrew Weinstock. I cannot wait because I have two exciting guests coming on soon. And I've recorded their episodes, so I know that it's going to be such an interesting conversation. The first is Rachel Tukolsky, who wrote a book called Writing on Fire, a fierce yet friendly guide to writing humanities essays in college. I've used excerpts of it for my Writing 2 course at Montclair. It has gone over so well. I just love what Rachel does. And we get into this in our episode about this metaphor about writing on fire, like how that's a great way to think about free flowing, brainstorming, creative ideas, and getting into that flow state, which, as Rachel explains, happens not just in writing, but in many other avenues. And then the other guest that I have on is David Starkey, who wrote a book called Academic Writing Now, a brief guide for busy students. It is designed to cover the basics of a college writing course in a concise, student-friendly format. Each chapter concentrates on a crucial element of composing an academic essay and is capable of being read in a single sitting, which, for a generation, myself included, I think all of us now, just consumed by digital media or just this attention grabbing technology, reading in a single sitting is definitely a plus. So head to Broadview Press, use the promo code Ivory Tower, and you'll get 20% off every single book in their collection. There's also a really cool digital library collection they have. So if you're a librarian, take a look at that. Message me. If you're a librarian, I'd be happy to show you what that new collection looks like. And I hope you all enjoy your reading.
Yeah, there's not the same kind of sexuality, obviously. There is some frontal nudity, especially like in the shower scene in the first episode. There are like some background actors who you see full frontal. But there's it's mostly not at all sexy. There is one sort of eye fucking scene between the Cam and what's it, Jones or something. I can't remember. Everybody's known by their last name, of course, because it boots Camp. But the other queer guy in his platoon, he is they make eye contact in a shower, and there's a brief sense of like there's a mutual attraction, maybe something's going to happen here, but nothing like Heated Rivalry. There's more sex in the first 5 minutes of Heated Rivalry than there is in all 8 episodes of Boots,
which I think right is fine for what Boots' story is telling. But like you're saying, Jeremy, I agree with you. Like the boot camp experience, it's not just the closeted gay guy who has a hard time. It's everyone. It's the guy who is overweight. It's the guy who is Latino. It's the guy who obsesses about his wife. Like, and
every person of color gets called something offensive. And I also I compare Boots to if you were watching Heated Rivalry and you had to sit through the entire hockey match in each episode. Like it would be so grueling if you're not a fan of hockey, and I'm not. Like you get so much of the brutal experience, and I've seen Full Metal Jacket. I know what what happens on Paris Island. I know what Marine recruits go through. It seems like it's very realistically depicted, but it sure ain't fun to watch.
Well, and that's the thing is, I like the show because I have cousins who were special ops and I bonded over them with this show, like talking about their experience. So it was a nice like opener for that experience that, isn't something we usually talk about. We talk about like our family life. But I will say I love how there's a straight male ally friend with Cam. Like I like the experience of seeing what it's like when you have a guy in your corner who knows and is open with you. And I thought that was really well depicted and something that we don't see on screen a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy edited the Boots review that'll come out. It's been eclipsed by Heated Rivalry. It's about the closet Boots, but it is really about Cam's relationship with himself, which is manifested by the alter ego. There isn't a lot of sex. It's about friendship. It's about mothers. These aren't topics that are, crossover appeal. And God bless Norman Lear. He died at 100 years old. He did all in the Family, the Jeffersons. It's a show in an older model. And there is a nice parallel to Heated Rivalry and the Sullivan subplot, the superior that's under investigation. You do get some naked bodies and a little whiff of sexuality there, but it's the opposite of Heated Rivalry. These guys are dying in the closet. They're Sullivan's drinking himself heavily, and so I just think the show has more pathos. It's not romantic, but
Hmm.
it just has. I just saw myself personally in Cam, maybe because it's set in the 90s. He's kind of a wimp, but he's lovable, and it's just it's a heartfelt show that I think again could have been made 20 years ago. And I think Jeremy's right that the subject matter too is not going to cross over really.
Yeah, well, and I think it also shows us now, um, like I was excited to hear from Greg that they're thinking of doing a Broadway play because I do think a Broadway play, it kind of reminds me of Take Me Out, if you know Take Me Out,
Yeah.
or things in those registers. I could see that. I could definitely even see if they wait a few years, he's coming out with a new book that talks about his sexual experiences after boot camp because then you're like out, you know,
Just the
uh
heated rivalry version.
yeah, out on missions. But I also think there could be a film done. Like, it's not impossible for it to like resonate a few years from now. And that's what I wanted to ask you both is has Heated Rivalry opened the doors for more queer media or has it just latched onto the male-male romance intrigue?
Hmm.
I think we will see more adaptations of male romance novels because I mean there's money to be made and it's hugely popular. It has taken hold of the zeitgeist, so there's
Hmm.
gonna be some producer somewhere who's like, let's option all of these male romance novels and see what we can get off the ground. Will it lead to wider queer depictions on film or on television? I don't know. I would be a little bit surprised if it spawns another Boots or another Overcompensating, because everything that I've been hearing all this year is that with the Trump administration being so anti-queer and especially anti-trans, and the whole country shifting to the right in recent years, that studios are just saying no, 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 no more queer content, no more even queer side characters in this show or this movie. So I mean, I am happy that Heated Rivalry exists because it at least demonstrates that there's a market, and Hollywood is nothing if not money hungry. So I think some positive thing will come out of it, but I think it'll probably be a knockoff of Heated Rivalry, and then a knockoff of that knockoff, and then another knockoff.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody's going to like hire Gus Van Sant to make a new My Own Private Idaho because of Heated Rivalry.
I mean, also it should be said, people don't go to the movies anymore. I've been to the movies to see some of the Oscar noms like Marty Supreme and Hamnet, but I haven't been to the movies in a long, long time. And if we get to Overcompensating, great. But these are all streamers. And so, I think a wife could also put on Heated Rivalry at home to see how her husband might react for a laugh. But it's a different thing to be on the big screen.
Oh, so true. And yeah, I even anytime I'm in the cinema, it's like a shock when every seat is full. And I think the only experiences I've had that is Wicked for Good at
Wicked,
Times Square, which makes sense. And
Avatar.
yeah, which I didn't see because I'm not so into Avatar. But you're right. Like any kind of more indie or um, we'll call it like niche film, like a Hamnet, which I'm really excited to see, just isn't getting. I mean, does it need to get a full house? I don't know. I think it's great that it's still in the movie theaters, but I am. I love what Heated Rivalry, the conversation. I just keep wanting more and more queer literature adapted into films. Like, I just can't believe there's such iconic queer literature that has not been picked up by producers. And I keep waiting for like mainstream or out gay producers to like form some kind of company, like the way Reese Witherspoon formed her company, or the way that all these actors form companies. That why is Dancer from the Dance not a film? I can't understand that. Um,
Boy's
The
Own
City and
Story.
The City and the Pillar by Gore Vidal isn't a film. I mean, there's like just, which I don't know if we want to see that film, but
I
Just
might skip
just
the City and the Pillar
but
as a cinematic
just
adaptation.
just turn
yeah.
them into superheroes and put them in capes. And if we have a gay Cape Crusader, maybe start there.
Well, that's true. I'm surprised we don't have such an openly gay superhero film, which I know
No,
they keep talking about.
well, I mean, I think like Brie Larson is kind of lesbian coded in the Captain
Mhm.
Marvel movies. Like
Oh, true.
there are little hints of it here and there. But again, like, studios just want to make money and they're afraid that queer content will scare audiences away. Like Disney notoriously has had characters in animated films in
Mm.
particular de-queered, and there was all of that ridiculous debate over a brief kiss between two women in the movie Lightyear. Like
Wow.
it is seen as like stepping on the third rail to put queer content into a movie that is expected to make $500 million. But I think the Heated Rivalry will embolden some people a little bit to do some kind of queer stories, but I think they'll be very safe takes. And I think Heated Rivalry is a very safe take on
Yeah.
a queer story
Yeah, yeah,
because it hews to all of the romance novel tropes,
Yeah.
and it isn't challenging in any way, and that's part of the reason it's so popular. It doesn't challenge audiences, it just
no,
goes down real easy,
Yeah,
just
well,
like
no.
even
Shane.
though you like, put down the writing quality, that's what's selling, right, Jeremy? And I think that's the thing I do want to bring up is if these books are, Rachel Reed, Colleen Hoover, I mean, we could even go with John Grisham, like there's just airport reading or Hudson booksellers at Port Authority reading that it does so well because they're page turners. And what does that tell us about the American public right now with arts and culture? I mean, I think there's a whole discussion to be had about um, how much, like, what kind of content does the American public, you know, what do they want to see in the movie theaters? Like, going back to even Colin's point, like, what is selling right now? What stories are even appealing to people?
I mean, it's escapism, obviously, and that's been true probably forever, certainly for a long time. I mean, like I said, people don't necessarily want to be challenged. They want something that will just, maybe reify their prejudices or their assumptions, and that will not ask them to consider anything too challenging. But I think, if you're going to tell a queer story that is going to attract a straight audience, you can't challenge them too much because you've already challenged them by asking them to accept a same-sex couple.
Yeah. And it's the teacher in me. I know we're running out of time. The teacher in me that wants to jam pack it in there, but I'd say one, Heated Rivalry does challenge viewers in that it's a happy ending. And I don't think you can underestimate young queer people who see that and think, oh, I am not going to die or be subjected to infidelity or all these things that we see and are used to seeing. But with Overcompensating, I agree with Jeremy. It's really just Animal House, but with a gay guy at the center of it. And it also doesn't really, I mean, yes, you have a queer protagonist, but it's all the usual college antics that we've seen, paddling and hazing and so in that way too,
Drinking out of a dick.
yeah. And I didn't mean to call the other shows losers. I just meant that it's obvious Heated Rivalry is the sensation of the three.
No. And I mean, I don't think, Greg doesn't deny that either, which is interesting because he hasn't watched Heated Rivalry, which,
He lives on
that
Earth. So,
that could be Greg could answer about that, and that could be like an analysis there. But, I agree, Colin, and Jeremy, there's no um seeing queer happiness is itself a provocation, but it's also, if like that's what's groundbreaking, is the queer happiness, like, because literature that I would want to make, like I would love to direct Song of Achilles or be in a Song of Achilles production,
Okay.
because I still think, there's so many novels that are ripe for the picking. But a lot of the ones that I would want to do, it would be hard for me to find like a happily ever after. A lot of
Well,
them are going to be like a Luca Guadagnino film, which is not a happily ever after.
I mean, Andrew, would you play Achilles or Patroclus?
Hmm. Hector. No, I'm just kidding. No. Probably Patroclus, because I
Yeah.
also am obsessed with The Persian Boy by Mary Renaud,
Oh wow.
which, I think.
A lot of people don't know the Trojan War was fought over condoms. Sorry, old joke.
Magnum
Old,
condoms? No,
old
okay.
joke. Old joke.
Well, and yeah, and we can go for a few more minutes. Do you both have
Sure.
time?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, like, is there anything that you both, like, if you could see a TV show or a film adaptation, is there like a narrative that you think, I mean, James Baldwin, I think there's a lot that, hasn't been done. Like Another Country. I would love to see like Another Country, or, you know,
I think it,
just so much out there.
I defer to you two because you're have voracious readers. But In Memoriam, the World War One tale, I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
in production. But again, like Heated Rivalry, it's a war story with soldiers. So maybe
Mm.
this is where we're dipping the toe in. We need them to be hockey players, soldiers, in order to also tell a queer story. But Jeremy and Andrew, you know contemporary fiction way better than I do. So I'm a 19th century guy. So
Well, but I like that. I like what you're latching onto, because you're right. There's something with the patriarchal, these exclusively male, the fraternity,
yeah, yeah.
which overcompensating, I have to say, I love the Megan Fox scene, like when she's on the poster. That was probably my favorite moment. But it is very nostalgic. Like, I felt nostalgia. And I know, Jeremy, I think, I forget, you were asking about the timeline, right?
Mhm.
Like,
It's very
I don't think it's
Jeremy's the
supposed to
joke.
be present day. I think it's supposed to be when he started his comedy on YouTube, which was like
Yeah.
2016-ish.
Jeremy should take it, but the chronology is all mixed up.
It
Yeah.
is confusing.
yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine last night at the Heated Rivalry screening that we sort of unintentionally wandered into. And he said that it is like it's very autobiographical by Benito Skinner, and that it basically is supposed to take place when he really was in college, like 13 years ago. And it is very confusing because there are certainly, Charlie XCX is in the show, and she was not a huge star 13 years ago. I mean, I don't know how old she is, but she probably was in high school 13 years ago. And there are references to other like celebrities and pop culture that come from the last 5 years, but it's also like, in the opening scene flashback of the very first episode, like his, as like an 11-year-old or whatever, his, quote unquote porn is Brendan Fraser in George of the
Oh yeah.
Jungle, which would just about track for how old Benito Skinner really is, but wouldn't track if he's supposedly, born in like 2007.
Yeah.
That would be a very weird thing for him to choose
Mhm.
if he was 18 years old currently.
Yeah, or Lucky by Britney Spears.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
and I
right.
was like, should
Yeah.
I look up when Lucky came out? And then I decided I didn't care that much.
But yeah, no, it would
But
be a
but
millennial.
it
Like he's
it
my
feels
age.
like it
Yeah.
feels like it jumps all over the place in terms of when it's supposed to be taking place. And there's never a title card that says, 2009 or present day or anything. And so you're just sort of left scratching your head. I will say there were some things I enjoyed about it. I thought there were some really great guest stars in it.
Yeah.
Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers are
Oh
in it.
gosh, yeah.
Um,
That's a
Caleb
good scene.
Heron, Kaya Gerber. We already mentioned Megan Fox. Andrea Martin is in it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really not very funny. I think it's partly because, like Colin said, a lot of these jokes are retreads or they're maybe a variation on something that's retreaded. But I thought that Carmen's roommate, Haley,
Yeah.
she is the most consistently funny character and
Yeah.
gets most of the best lines. Like when she's very first introduced, as Carmen is arriving at the university, and she asks, "Are you Latinx?" Because she can't pronounce Latinx.
Yeah. Well, and I loved the cameo of I can't remember the name of the actress, but the Frenchie from Greece.
Oh, Didi Khan, yes.
Didi Khan. Yes. I love Didi Khan.
Oh,
Yeah.
and have to point out, Didi Khan's nurse is Robbie GK, who
Oh,
plays Kip on Heated Rivalry.
a less chiseled. Not that he's not
Well, you
chiseled
don't see
there.
him nearly as naked as you do in Heated Rivalry.
That's true. So we don't know if he had an 8-pack there. But they're
He might have had a
yeah.
12 pack at that time.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. But I think all of these shows, their exercise regimen and their meal regimen, Boots, I know they were in boot camp. Like they actually were doing training. And then they had
Some of those
Marines on
guys looked
set.
roided out. Like some of those guys were enormous. And it's like, if this is somebody like 18 to, let's say, 25, somebody who would be a normal person to sign up for the military, like are you really going to have these massive muscles, especially if you're like 18 or 19 or 20? Like some of those guys were a little bit beyond belief.
Well, but no one wants normal guys on TVA. I'm just kidding. But it is true, unfortunately. I'm sorry, it's
To the
true.
point that Colin made earlier, it would be nice to see more normal guys. And I think Miles Heiser, the lead,
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of a skinny guy. He's obviously in good shape, but he's not massive. I mean, the character obviously could not be like a big scary guy, or he wouldn't make any sense. But he does look like a fairly normal 18-year-old, although I think he's like 25.
And the cameo people too, like Bowen Yang, Matt Rogers. Like, I mean, especially Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers. I feel like they are people I would see on the street. Like,
Yeah.
so there is some casting with that, but I think, yeah, Benito Skinner, he definitely matches that like gay Mormon fantasy or the like Midwest guy who is appealing.
I want to be clear. I have a 6-pack. It's just in a mini fridge. But we're getting in, interestingly, as gay men, into all the body stuff. If we have time, I mean, the way that I tried to frame the review in the Gay and Lesbian review, though, even though I identified with Cam in Boots personally, the overcompensating theme, I think a lot of us identify with, which is, overachieving. And for me, sensing something there was different about me very early on. So I had to get the PhD. I had to have the marriage. I had to, and I found that, relatable and moving in overcompensating, but it still went for goofy 20-minute sitcom. And I thought Skinner mugging a lot at the camera. It's just cheesy. But I mean, I think the central conceit is one that a lot of us can identify with, which is, okay, I've got to be the best in all these categories because maybe I sense something's different about me. That is interesting. But the show as a sitcom couldn't really get at that. But that's just my 2 cents,
Yeah.
I'm a Boots guy. I just thought Boots it had the pathos that I liked, but yeah.
Yeah.
I will say in defense of all of these shows, like all of them get better in the last two episodes. All of them like become more emotional and richer and more complicated. Mild spoiler, but I loved the like scene with Benito Skinner and Lucas Gage in the next to last
Yes.
episode of
Yeah.
Overcompensating.
Yeah.
I thought there that almost would fit into a show like Heated Rivalry because there was that tenderness and that acknowledgement that I fucked up, that you expressed interest in me and I pushed you away because I couldn't deal with my own feelings. And I thought that felt very true. And I mean, I thought they make a cute couple. I'm down if there's more Lucas Gage and Benito Skinner in
Yeah.
season two of Overcompensating.
I love Lucas Gage, his
And yeah,
acting.
Lucas Gage is just
The
he's a
White
treasure.
Lotus, so
He's
good.
a treasure for sure.
Yeah, well, and maybe just the last question I have is, would these shows have, even if like Jeremy's saying, and I don't think you're wrong, Jeremy, is even if they haven't achieved what Heated Rivalry has done, which not everything is going to achieve that, like it's like a bestseller book, is if they weren't coming out narratives, if they weren't about being closeted, would they have hit success? Like, how about if everyone was out and proud and, wearing their rainbow merch on the hockey rink?
Mhm.
Would that have been appealing?
It is, I think, too much of a fantasy world for anybody to really buy into it. And just, at Marine boot camp as well. I mean, you could be out and proud as a freshman in college, and plenty of people are, especially these days. I mean, I think, Colin was saying, some of these experiences of being closeted and overachieving to compensate for feeling like there was something wrong with you. I think that's very relatable, maybe if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s. But if you're like 18 and starting college these days, when somewhere close to a third of people that age group identify as somewhere on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, I think they're having a very different experience, and I found the repression of Benny and the fact that he didn't know any gay people and didn't know anything about gay culture until his straight woman friend taught
Mhm.
him.
Mhm.
I found that a little hard to believe if it
Mhm.
is supposed to be set in the present day or even set 10 years ago.
Mhm. And
True.
I think Jeremy makes a great point too, that these three shows are about gay males at the beginning of their experience. In Benito's experience, or Benny, he's at the earliest stage. Final episode is just him being revealed or exposed. Um, if Heated Rivalry ended at the Folsom parade or in a dungeon with Shane on a dog leash, this would not have connected. But for the time being, they are monogamous, and it conforms to all the things a straight audience sort of wants to see.
Yeah, like even if in the shower scene, Ilya's like, "Oh, bro, I dropped the soap." Like, I think, right? I think there's also a fine line. Like, all of these narratives are also um pornographic fantasies in the gay community. So like they do kind of have to walk a line of like, well, when is this going to enter into something too unbelievable? Like where, you know, I could see where in the writing room there was probably a lot of discussion about
Mhm.
how they're going to depict like even the Lucas Gage and Benito Skinner scene, or even in the frat party, like are they going to do like the mythical elephant walk, like I think we could all see in the boot camp too, things could have taken a turn that would have been something you would see on X tube. You're not going to see that on a streaming service, so I want to leave us
So
with
what you're saying
yeah.
is I'm too old to join the military or join the NHL. Is that what I think that's what I'm taking away?
Well, I'm
Oh
not
well.
saying that, Colin. I'm
Oh
just gonna
well.
say you might have a hard time. All of us might have a hard time trying to enter into certain spaces. But I know if we could leave the audience with now that, Heated Rivalry has made a scene, we can make recommendations. So, what TV show or film, like recently, we could say like from 2000 and on, would you recommend people watch that maybe hasn't gotten as much buzz and press? So,
Jeremy, you go first. I got to look something up.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is a film that I reviewed for the magazine that I saw at the Queer Film Festival here in Boston last year, and it's a Filipino film that I don't think it's available on streaming in the West yet. I don't know how easy it ever will be to find. But it's called Sometimes I Feel Like Walking, or Some Nights I Feel Like Walking, I think is the title. And it's kind of like the Filipino version of My Own Private Idaho, which is one of my all-time favorite films. And if you can find it, it's really well made on what I have to assume was a tiny budget. A very accomplished film, good acting. If you've never been to Manila, and I certainly haven't, it gives you a real sense of what it might be like to live in the like lowest class of poverty in Manila. And I would love for people to have the ability to see that.
thank you, Jeremy. Colin?
Well, back to Hamnet. I fully confess I have a Paul Mescal problem. It's an unhealthy relationship. If you want butts, you do get Paul Mescal's butt in Hamnet. But I'd go back to All of Us Are Strangers with the hot priest, and I guess he's playing gay in the history of sound
Yes.
coming up. And if you haven't seen Paul Mescal and the Daddy skit on Saturday Night Live, or Paul Mescal is your daddy. It's pretty funny, but I just think he's so versatile. He's really an actor for the new age. He's not flummoxed playing gay straight. I think he points us to where actors should be going to. But yeah.
Yeah. I would say in honor of the Super Bowl, if you've never seen Bad Bunny dancing, you're definitely going to see a lot there. But that's my just humor. I would say, though, I did a whole episode with Mary, who does the true crime show, about Ed Gein. And, I know Colin has thoughts, so we don't have to go into Ed Gein. Current Ryan Murphy, I have a lot of frustration with, but I have to recommend Pose. I think Pose is probably a TV show that is one of those just shows that really looks at all of the different identities, specifically the trans community and the drag ballroom community, and really hits different emotions that I haven't seen. And I really wish it had gotten more press. So
It's a lot of fun. Pose is good stuff.
it is. And the music is incredible. I mean, I'm a disco person, so it was like, I love every episode.
And one of very few shows ever. I mean, Laverne Cox has a new show that she's a star of, but I have a hard time thinking of anything else that really put trans people right at the center in the way that Pose did, and Black and Latino trans people too. It's not just like a white trans person who like passes for cisgender. It's really remarkable in being bold enough to do that, and that it even got 2 seasons, I think, is pretty great.
Yeah. I mean, it should be added that Laverne Cox, the show Jeremy is referring to, is Clean Slate. It's on Prime, and it's also Left Behind by Norman Lear with Boots. And so pretty extraordinary. At 100 years old, he left behind these shows in development on trans and queer experience. So rest in peace.
I love that show. The Laverne Cox Clean Slate is so funny. It is so good. And sadly, it didn't get picked up. which, it doesn't have a new season coming out. But just like Boots, thankfully there's a first season. Like, again, I think that at least Mid-Century Modern, which I have to watch because I haven't gotten into. But again, Matt Bomer, Fellow Travelers. I love Jonathan Bailey. I mean, there's so many good shows. So we'll be back again. Let's see, if you both are up for it, and Joseph, which I'm sure he will be, let's wait a few months. Is there going to be something that we can talk about in light of Heated Rivalry? Or are we going to have to wait until season 2?
Heated Rivalry, I'm told, is renewed for seasons 2 and 3. So I think we're going to be living with these two for quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as there's money to be made.
Yeah. And Bridgerton, I kind of fell off the Bridgerton train, especially when I thought that one artist brother was going to be like our bi queer male experience when he's like I don't know if you remember, but he's kind of like with the Bohemians, and there's like some queerness, but then they went away, and like apparently he's the brother who's going to be in the new season, and he wants a wife. So they've kind of erased all the queerness.
He's the Stephen Carrington of our era.
Well, I want you both, please mention, where everyone can find you, and especially, where everyone can read these incredible reviews of the shows we've talked about. So yeah, go for it, Jeremy.
Well, you can read my work and a lot of Colin's work at glreview.org. It is behind a paywall, so you will need to buy a subscription to read more. I think you can read like 3 articles a month or something. But I encourage everybody to do that. If you enjoyed this conversation, you'll find lots of things that are of interest to you there. The review is also on pretty much all the social media platforms, although it has different screen names on different platforms. So just search for Gay and Lesbian Review or GNLR and you'll find it. And I'm Jeremy C. Fox on all the platforms.
Yeah. And if you want to get kinky, the new issue is all about kink culture, including even maybe some foot fetish things going on. And then Colin.
Definitely some foot fetish things.
Colin. So where can they find you, Colin?
Well, congrats to Jeremy in his new position at the Gay and Lesbian Review. They were the first to publish me in graduate school. So Brokeback Mountain came out and I submitted something, and Richard Scheider said, "We've done a lot of Brokeback Mountain." And then Heath Ledger passed away, and I said, "Well, can I write an elegy for Heath Ledger?" And then I never went away. So I am grateful to the Gay and Lesbian Review. They're just, I call it the Gay New Yorker. But you can find me on all the socials. And if you can't sleep at night, my book is on Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley, The Radical Ecology of the Shelleys. And this was a lot of fun. I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, I love that, Colin. And you're going to love that I'm doing a classic book club at the Secaucus Library here in North Jersey. And the first book we're reading is Frankenstein.
And maybe we should do The Bride, because The Bride of Frankenstein's the new thing.
Oh, we should. And I think that's going to definitely...
Buckley.
Yes, Jessie Buckley. And Maggie Gyllenhaal's first directing film?
Oh, she's directed before, I think.
Okay. But she's brought together a who's who. Definitely. Right, Salma Hayek, her brother, Jessie Buckley, who was Jessie Buckley the one in Hamnet and in Cabaret?
Yeah, she's going to win the Oscar, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing Jessie Buckley on YouTube when she was on the West End in Cabaret, and I was like, this is incredible, the performance. So, I'm excited. I have a good feeling about the next few months. I think, things are...
This couldn't get worse.
Well, you know what? And then that's when... the renaissance of art happens, is when things are shit hits the fan. Well, I thank you both. I can't wait to have you both back on. And
thank you a lot.
Yeah. Everyone watch these shows and, make sure you get your hands on the Gay and Lesbian Review. Have it on your bedside table. Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much.